I reached Kasan, a miserable town, which I found laid waste, and well nigh reduced to ashes. All along the street, instead of houses, were to be seen heaps of charred plaster and rubbish, and walls without windows or roofs. These were the marks Pugachev had left. I was taken to the fort, which had remained whole, and the hussars, my escort, handed me over to the officer of the guard. He called a farrier, who coolly riveted irons on my ankles. Then I was led to the prison building, where I was left alone in a narrow, dark cell, which had but its 4 walls and a little skylight, with iron bars. Such a beginning augured nothing good. Still I did not lose either hope or courage. I had recourse to the consolation of all who suffer, and, after tasting for the first time the sweetness of a prayer from an innocent heart full of anguish, I peacefully fell asleep without giving a thought to what might befall me. On the morrow the jailer came to wake me, telling me that I was summoned before the commission. Two soldiers conducted me across a court to the commandant's house, then, remaining in the anteroom, left me to enter alone the inner chamber. I entered a rather large reception room. Behind the table, covered with papers, were seated 2 persons, an elderly general, looking severe and cold, and a young officer of the guard, looking, at most, about 30, of easy and attractive demeanor. Near the window at another table sat a secretary with a pen behind his ear, bending over his paper ready to take down my evidence. The cross-examination began. They asked me my name and rank. The general inquired if I were not the son of Andrei Petrovich Grinev, and on my affirmative answer, he exclaimed, severely, "It is a great pity such an honorable man should have a son so very unworthy of him." I quietly made answer that, whatever might be the accusations lying heavily against me, I hoped to be able to explain them away by a candid avowal of the truth. My coolness displeased him. "You are a bold, barefaced rascal," he said to me, frowning. "However, we have seen many of them." Then the young officer asked me by what chance and at what time I had entered Pugachev's service, and on what affairs he had employed me. I indignantly rejoined that, being an officer and a gentleman, I had not been able to enter Pugachev's service, and that he had not employed me on any business whatsoever. How, then, does it happen, resumed my judge, that the officer and gentleman be the only one pardoned by the usurper, while all his comrades are massacred in cold blood? How does it happen, also, that the same officer and gentleman could live snugly and pleasantly with the rebels, and receive from the ringleader presents of a pelissa, a horse, and a half-ruble? What is the occasion of so strange a friendship? And upon what can it be founded if not on treason, or at the least be occasioned by criminal and unpardonable baseness? The words of the officer wounded me deeply, and I entered hotly on my vindication. I related how my acquaintance with Pugachev had begun, on the steppe, in the midst of a snowstorm, how he had recognized me and granted me my life at the taking of Fort Belogorsk. I admitted that, indeed, I had accepted from the usurper a touloup and a horse, but I had defended Fort Belogorsk against the rascal to the last gasp. Finally I appealed to the name of my general, who could testify to my zeal during the disastrous siege of Orenburg. The severe old man took from the table an open letter, which he began to read aloud. In answer to your Excellency on the score of Ensign Greneff, who is said to have been mixed up in the troubles, and to have entered into communication with the robber, communication contrary to the rules and regulations of the service, and opposed to all the duties imposed by his oath, I have the honor to inform you that the aforesaid Ensign Greneff served at Orenburg from the month of October, 1773, until February 24th of the present year, upon which day he left the town, and has not been seen since. Still the enemy's deserters have been heard to declare that he went to Pugachev's camp, and that he accompanied him to Fort Belogorsk, where he was formerly in garrison. On the other hand, in respect to his conduct I can, here the general broke off, and said to me with harshness, "Well, what have you to say now for yourself?" I was about to continue as I had begun, and relate my connection with Marya as openly as the rest. But suddenly I felt an unconquerable disgust to tell such a story. It occurred to me that if I mentioned her, the commission would oblige her to appear, and the idea of exposing her name to all the scandalous things said by the rascals under cross-examination, and the thought of even seeing her in their presence was so repugnant to me that I became confused, stammered, and took refuge in silence. My judges, who appeared to be listening to my answers with a certain goodwill, were again prejudiced against me by the sight of my confusion. The officer of the guard requested that I should be confronted with the principal accuser. The general bade them bring in yesterday's rascal. I turned eagerly towards the door to look out for my accuser. A few moments afterwards the clank of chains was heard, and there entered Schwabrine. I was struck by the change that had come over him. He was pale and thin. His hair, formerly black as jet, had begun to turn gray. His long beard was unkempt. He repeated all his accusations in a feeble, but resolute tone. According to him, I had been sent by Pugachev as a spy to Orenburg. I went out each day as far as the line of sharpshooters to transmit written news of all that was passing within the town. Finally, I had definitely come over to the usurper's side, going with him from fort to fort, and trying, by all the means in my power, to do evil to my companions in treason, to supplant them in their posts, and profit more by the favors of the arch-rebel. I heard him to the end in silence, and felt glad of one thing: he had never pronounced Maria's name. Was it because his self-love was wounded by the thought of her who had disdainfully rejected him, or was it that still within his heart yet lingered a spark of the same feeling which kept me silent? Whatever it was, the commission did not hear spoken the name of the daughter of the commandant of Fort Belogorsk. I was still further confirmed in the resolution I had taken, and when the judges asked me if I had aught to answer to Schwabrine's allegations, I contented myself with saying that I did abide by my first declaration, and that I had nothing more to show for my vindication. The general bid them take us away. We went out together. I looked calmly at Schwabrine, and did not say one word to him. He smiled a smile of satisfied hatred, gathered up his fetters, and quickened his pace to pass before me. I was taken back to prison, and after that I underwent no further examination. I was not witness to all that I have still to tell my readers, but I have heard the whole thing related so often that the least little details have remained graven in my memory, and it seems to me I was present myself. Maria was received by my parents with the cordial kindness characteristic of people in old days. In the opportunity presented to them of giving a home to a poor orphan, they saw a favor of God. Very soon they became truly attached to her, for one could not know her without loving her. My love no longer appeared a folly even to my father, and my mother thought only of the union of her Petrushia with the commandant's daughter. The news of my arrest electrified with horror my whole family. Still, Maria had so simply told my parents the origin of my strange friendship with Pugachev that, not only were they not uneasy, but it even made them laugh heartily.